Thank you very much, and welcome everybody, and thanks for coming, and please do put in some questions which will help make for a very lively conversation. I am Michael Peel, as you've been told, European diplomatic correspondent of the Financial Times, so I guess I have a ringside seat in Brussels at the collapse of multilateralism in many places, and that's germane because this is the theme of the day, maintaining a multilateral dialogue, or perhaps restoring a multilateral dialogue would be even more appropriate. We're very fortunate today to have a very distinguished panel. Starting at the far end is Jean-Hervé Lorenzi, the Président of Le Cercle des économistes, and also Vice Chairman of UBS Holding France. And to his right is Gabriela Ramos, the Special Counsellor to the OECD Secretary General, Chief of Staff and Sherpa to the G20 for the OECD. Welcome. And finally, but certainly not least, is José Manzano, who's the president of Integra Capital and is a businessman from Argentina with a wealth of knowledge on Latin America, which we should make sure that we tap in this discussion. So please, with a final call to please ask questions and enrich this debate, I'd like to start by posing a very general question, and perhaps I could start with you, Gabriela. And the question is, simply in 3 words, briefly, is multilateralism dead?
Of course not. Not at all. Multilateralism is just a way of taking decisions and getting countries to agree on global solutions. But multilateralism cannot escape the state of the world. Actually, I believe that the lack of support, I will say it's not that, but there is this very worrisome trend of many countries preferring to solve their issues bilateral, and some institutions that are really suffering from this lack of support, particularly from major players. But to start or to kick off the discussion, I would reframe the issue, because when I hear, of course, I am representing the OECD, and so I feel the OECD is in very good shape, although with lots of stress. I can share with you some of the difficulties that we have in reaching decisions. But what is happening is that this is another expression of the lack of trust of our societies in the institutions that we have built to deliver for them. And we have heard the mayor of Paris. When you think about the growth model that we have followed for 10 years and where international institutions have contributed to build the narrative of the growth, or the growth narrative that we have followed, in terms of you grow first and you redistribute later, or let's just look at GDP instead of looking at what is the distributional impact of growth, what you have, or again, grow first and take care of the environment later. What happens is that we are now in this crisis in which inequalities are very, very high, even in the OECD countries, where you have the top 10% of people earning half of wealth. And not only that, linked to income and wealth, you have lack of opportunities, social mobility is stagnant, middle classes, and we see it everywhere. Climate change, nowhere to be close to the solutions that we need. On the contrary, 2018 was the first year in which emissions started to grow again, and we know that whatever we do in the United Nations doesn't seem to have the level of ambition that we need. And then if you think even about growth, for our perspectives, because of the trade tensions and because of the bilateralism, what is happening is that growth is now around 2.9%, but going down. Investment is completely flat, and we have a lot of uncertainties related to the trade war between China and the US, and also including Brexit. And so I would say that all of these elements, and then you think of course, of issues like the digital revolution that is, of course, a source of great expectations and inspiration, but it's also a source of concern, because those that are at the bottom of the income distribution are also thinking, is me who's going to be affected? Is the middle skills, is the lower skills, and then we see the emergence of non-standard work linked to the platform economy, which is very also concentrated in some firms. So I would say what is happening is that, in general, our populations, and we see it everywhere, even in countries that were like so stable like Chile, people are not trusting these solutions. So the real question is not whether multilateralism delivers or not. How do we recover trust? And how do we recover the effectiveness of this way of taking decisions to deliver for people? So let's not lose sight of that. And I will have some examples of where I think we have made good progress.
Thank you very much. You talk about recovery of trust and the failure of the system. In some sense, this is a very common theme. And indeed, I was struck. I've recently published a book called The Fabulists, which I happen to have a copy of here, available from all good bookshops. But the point of that is that I look at autocratic and demagogic movements around the world and how they've managed in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and how they've capitalized on this feeling of the system having broken and how that's been an essential part of their rise. Jean-Hervé, is that a thesis you agree with? I mean, do you see the state we're in as a symptom of the failure of an old system, and how serious is it? I think you're going to talk in French, right?
Oui. Je dois dire que j'ai beaucoup d'admiration, d'estime, nous connaissons, mais je ne partage absolument pas votre point de vue. La formule d'ailleurs n'est pas celle de se dire est-ce que le multilatéralisme est mort, c'est de se dire est-ce que la forme que nous avons connue pendant un demi-siècle de multilatéralisme est morte? Et ma réponse est oui, bien sûr. Bien sûr, et je pense que c'est une erreur de se cacher derrière, disons, une vision trop optimiste des sujets. Il y a 3 ans, je parle devant PMI et Gérard Mestralet, qui était aux rencontres d'Aix-en-Provence. Notre thème était, il y a 2 ans, les métamorphoses du monde. Il y avait 200 économistes, etc. Et le thème général était de dire ce qui est la plus grande des métamorphoses, c'est la mort de la forme du multilatéralisme. J'insiste bien pour qu'il n'y ait pas de confusion. Le multilatéralisme en lui-même, par définition, est quelque chose, un animal qui vit, qui a des périodes glorieuses, des périodes qui le sont moins. Mais la réalité, c'est que cette forme a disparu. Et je voudrais juste, pour argumenter sur ce point, je suis un optimiste, hein, je ne suis pas du tout un pessimiste, je crois qu'il y a des solutions, mais je crois qu'il faut simplement regarder la réalité en face. Les deux, j'allais dire, dates clés à bien avoir en tête, c'est celle de 89, la chute du mur de Berlin, et nous nous sommes trompés tous. Nous avons pensé que la forme de capitalisme, au fond l'expression même de ce qui est notre mode de fonctionnement dans les pays occidentaux, et de l'OCDE évidemment, allait s'imposer au monde. Nous faisions une confusion entre l'idée que j'allais dire, le marché allait s'imposer partout, mais les formes d'organisation économique, baptisées capitalisme, allaient diverger de manière très forte. Le capitalisme chinois n'a rien à voir avec le capitalisme suédois, par exemple, ou français. Et donc, il y avait dans cette idée, cette première idée, au fond, une vision un peu simpliste. Le monde allait être gouverné par, j'allais dire, par une sorte de bonne volonté, puisque nous sommes tous pareils. On n'était pas pareils. Et c'était une erreur de le penser. La deuxième date clé, c'est celle peut-être de la fin du mois de septembre 2008, après l'affaire de Lehman Brothers, où, me semble-t-il, grâce au FMI d'ailleurs, et grâce à son dirigeant de l'époque, qui ne manquait pas de talent en économie, il se trouve que c'est, de mon point de vue, le dernier acte de ce que fut le multilatéralisme, puisque c'est une décision collective qui fut prise par le G7, le G8, puis soutenu par la Chine, d'aller vers une relance pour empêcher d'avoir une crise qui serait une crise mondiale majeure. Aujourd'hui, on est, me semble-t-il, en réalité confronté à d'abord un ralentissement de l'économie, dont je tiens à préciser, c'est aussi un petit désaccord qui n'est pas lié fondamentalement au conflit, qui est d'ailleurs beaucoup de gesticulation entre la Chine et les États-Unis, mais qui est lié de fait à 3 transitions très compliquées, qui sont la transition démographique, ça joue massivement, c'est un vieux débat d'économistes, aging and growth, c'est compliqué, le vieillissement, ça ralentit l'économie, c'est un point majeur pour les décennies qui viennent. Deuxième aspect, la transition technologique qui segmente le monde entre ceux qui font partie des qualifiés et ceux qui font partie des non qualifiés, et ça crée ce que vous avez dit, madame, beaucoup d'inégalités, de tensions. Et puis, ce que Mme Hidalgo a évoqué, la transition écologique, mais dont il faut bien voir que dans un premier temps, peut-être 5 ans, peut-être 10 ans, les investissements supposés, tout cela n'est pas porteur de croissance. Les prévisions de l'OCDE sont pour moi très importantes parce qu'elles sont faites par des économistes très remarquables, notamment un membre du Cercle des économistes, Laurence Boone, mais la réalité, c'est que les 2,9 sont peut-être encore une vision assez optimiste pour les années qui viennent. Ma crainte, c'est que le ralentissement soit plus fort pour les raisons. Et tout ça, il faut trouver de nouvelles formes de multilatéralisme. Pourquoi ? Parce que lorsque vous ralentissez votre croissance, comme toujours dans la vie, les tensions entre les pays, les groupes de pays ont tendance à se renforcer et évidemment à créer finalement des conditions qui sont des conditions de conflit. C'est le cas entre les États-Unis et la Chine, aujourd'hui sur le plan commercial. Mais on voit bien que l'Europe est concernée, l'Amérique du Sud est quand même très touchée par un certain nombre de sujets. Donc, la forme de multilatéralisme que nous avons connue, elle ne fonctionne pas. Je crois qu'il faut l'inventer, une nouvelle forme. Je crois qu'il n'est pas mort, bien entendu. Sa forme, oui. Et je crois que l'inventer, c'est peut-être attaquer les sujets. Je réponds à votre question parce que je sais ce qu'elle va être, comment on fait. Donc, comme je suis un vieil économiste, je connais les questions qu'on pose.
Oui.
Oui, the question is...
We could come to that in a moment, if that's all right. That will be for the next round. Thank you. José Luis, Jean-Hervé mentioned in his tour d'horizon, he mentioned Latin America, and obviously that's a subject of great interest at the moment. And what's very striking is that you look at what's happening in Bolivia and in Chile, and you have two countries with very different political models in many ways, but each going through a period of turbulence and crisis. Can you perhaps just explain for the audience, as a businessman from the region, how you see the current situation in Latin America and how perhaps it links to this idea of old models, old multilateral models that are failing? How should we look at it?
There's two things that I'd like to take from the two previous interventions. First, thank you for having us here. One is recovering trust, and the other one is the effects of the slow growth. And if we are facing a recession, as I don't know, what would be the effect of the recession? And it has to do with, there are two demands that go in parallel. One is the demand for democracy. The demand for democracy is all over the place. Even if we are different, the countries that are very different have the same demands. So there is a demand for democracy, and there is a demand for inclusion. And then you have a demand for climate protection or remediation coming from the young all over the world. When you put the three demands together, you see that the failure has come from the leading elites. The leading elites from the center-right, even if they don't want, they work to keep the trust of the investor. And the leading elite from the center-left, even if they don't want, they work to keep the trust of ordinary people because it's their base of support. And then both, in some cases, are very committed to democracy, in some cases are less committed to democracy. So when you put the mix, you produce the disengagement. The disengagement comes from the top, it's not from below. The disengagement comes because the elite takes the capsule and separate from the base. So when you go through Latin America, we've seen, with no surprise, that the government surrendered in front of the narc dealers. We have a government that captured the son of the head of the cartel, then the guys show with the trucks, with the gun machines, and the guy is released. That is surrender. to save life, which is not the role of the government. The role of the government is to apply the law to save life in a broader sense, but maybe it was the good decision to take. So it's a very challenging situation, but it's a government, huge government, that surrender. When then you see how natural it is to see the number of dead journalists and candidates in elections in the same country, Mexico, and it's natural. It doesn't make the first page of any newspaper of the world. So they count by dozens. 80 journalists, 120 candidates, 86 city council, normal. So that is Mexico. You go down. And then migration. I think you run a poll in Mexico. I don't know how many of the young people would love to cross the border. It would be a shocking poll. It would be a shocking poll, also in my country. Shocking poll. Shocking means over 30. You go down, Central America, migration, massive migration, also drug, lack of institution. You move to Colombia, violence again, drugs, 200,000 hectares. 200,000 hectares of coca planting again after the Colombia plan, after 12B insecurity and military deployment, 200,000 hectares again. You go to Chile, there is one thing I am not, it is an expert in the region. I didn't see Chile coming. Now I can explain Chile, but I didn't see it coming. Always Chile was like, Chile is the way of going. Chile and Uruguay are the way of going. Uruguay never bring the investment. Chile brought some investment, big stability. Chile have lost the young. They don't have free education. How you engage the young? Many countries will have free education. It's very difficult to engage the young people. Chile didn't have free education. What do they have is billionaires. So they're very good producing billionaires, very bad producing universities. You have the result. They went to the streets for the universities before. They didn't break any window. 4 years later, they break the windows. After breaking the window, they will put fire in La Moneda. This is obvious. It's a country that produces billionaires and doesn't have money to give free education will face problem. Obviously, I'm seeing and saying this afterwards. I didn't see it before. So I'm the worst expert you can get in the region. Argentina. We had so-called populistic government. People was more or less happy until they became unhappy. Government lost the election. We went into a center-right government. I consider my left more progressive. Say, okay, we're going to be retired for 20 years. We will grow, and we will all make money. We failed in 4 years, 120 billion of debt. In the middle of that, Ecuador moved from the left to the right, same thing. Everything's broken. The president had to fly from Quito to Guayaquil. Not because of the weather, but because he lost control of the capital. He lost control of the capital. This sounds like the 60s. So, back to my beginning. It's the elite. The IMF has no idea. They're very good losing money. They don't know how to spend the money. When they spend the money is gone. Capital flies from the elites in every country. Ecuador and Argentina, same thing. 1 second on 1 week we could do. We have to look at what is behind, why all this wrong decision. It is the US-China tension. It is not the commercial war, it's the tension. If you are the president of Mexico to Argentina, of any of the countries, you get calls every morning. 2 calls. You feel the pressure in every decision. And the pressure is tough. It's like Cold War. So that is a call for multilateralism. That is this forum is this important. That is the role of France. That is the role of the Nordic countries. That is the role of Canada. That is the role of the UN, of the OECD, to give room to government to move in a rational middle ground.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was a great little tour, which really shows how Latin America is at the center of a lot of the questions we're talking about today. Yes, well, there already is, right? So we've spent 20 minutes diagnosing the problem, essentially. So now let's perhaps turn to potential solutions, and at both an economic and a political level. Obviously, one of the great challenges, everyone agrees, is taxation. That it's a national responsibility, but of course, this is something that has become completely overtaken in an age of international capital. Now, Gabriela, this is something that the OECD, in particular, I know has been doing some work on. Can you tell us, just explain a little bit about the kind of work you're doing and how, in simple terms, what are some of the benefits this can bring which can help to lessen some of the problems we're talking about?
Well, I think that's exactly what I meant in terms of disagreeing with Jean-Hervé that the multilateralism is not dead. Because what happens is that it's more complex to engage countries to deliver on the solutions that we need when you have populist governing and when you have this view that you put your country first, and that's very complex in a world that is so interlinked. We talk about this question, Mexico and the US. I mean, the 40% of the exports of Mexico to the US are US inputs. So first, we need to understand better how the world works in terms of these very impressive interlinkages and global value chains. So the fact here is not to say whether it is dead or not. The fact is to see where it has delivered and what are the elements that will explain that countries got together to agree on something, even in a context in which they don't want to talk about anything. And I have been the Sherpa to the G20 during the last 10 years. I can tell you that we have a very positive wave in which we were even contributing to the Paris Agreement. And this was just impressive because you remember that we have this division with China who didn't want to even get close to any kind of commitment, or the South, the global South, who said, I did not produce these outcomes. And at the end, the G20 and this coalition of people that wanted to deliver contributed to it. So the tax is a very good example because in this very strange context in which nobody wants to agree on anything, the OECD and the G20 produced the evidence, and that's a very important issue, producing the evidence of what are the problems we're trying to address. On the fact that because of tax evasion and tax erosion, governments were suffering in terms of having the budgets to provide for the solutions that they need to their people. And so we started with agreements to eliminate tax havens and to eliminate the fact that you have rich people hiding their money elsewhere. But there were so many vehicles to do it, so we had to address many of these issues. And then we move into something else, because tax evasion, of course, is the rich individuals that hide away to pay taxes. That was illegal. But then you have the base erosion and profit shifting, which is the fact that there are many multinationals that maximize or optimize not paying taxes because of the free flow of capitals. And so what we did was also to define the problem and how this was happening. This was not illegal. I think that we work so hard to avoid double taxation that we finish with double non-taxation. And therefore, what we're trying now to address is this. The governments were in agreement. I think that many companies, because they see that the outcomes are so difficult for them in terms of how divided are our societies, how fragmented and how confrontational is everything, they started to think that this was possible. And so we put together a framework in which we have the G20 and the very strong political leadership, and that's very important, the political leadership at the top of the G20 and the OECD countries. But then what we did was to build a very inclusive framework with 130 countries that will come together first to understand what is happening, how base erosion and profit shifting happen, and then to develop an action plan, and then to move on the question of the digital taxation. Not an easy walk in the park.
Yes.
Because when you talk about digital taxation, if you are a country that has a lot of consumers, you want to tax consumers.
Yeah.
If you are the country that developed the technology, you want to tax the technology. So, but we are working into it, and because there is this common understanding that this is something that needs to be solved. And I think it is very positive beyond the fact that we are demonstrating that multilateralism is alive, but the fact is also that we are delivering on something that is very dear to people. Everybody contributing their fair share of taxes, which was not the case. And therefore, the perception of people feeling that they have been left behind and that the growth model had just benefited the lucky few, we are bringing this message in the sense that we're trying to fix something that was contributing to this perception, and is being effective. We will see June next year, watch this space, we'll find a solution.
Just to follow up on that, I remember 20 years ago, one of my first jobs at the FT was covering some work the OECD was doing at that time on unfair tax competition. It's a very slow and difficult process, isn't it? Can you just give one example, perhaps, of something, a practical change that you've achieved now that is an improvement on the situation?
I mean, I can speak for 2 hours. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but no, let me tell you very concretely. 10 years ago, it was exchange of information, of fiscal information, on demand. And you have to get, you don't know how many proofs to get OECD countries that were very strong financial centers to provide any information. Today, we are exchanging 450,000 million accounts automatically. So we move from on demand to automatically. Right now, whomever opens an account anywhere in the network of the countries that are participating in the effort gets the information to their country immediately, without any. So this is amazing. Even before the automatic exchange of information entered into force, there were thousands of very rich people coming to the tax administrations, and we have now 95 billion additional tax revenues under the system of voluntary reporting that just came because of this. And on the context of the BEPS, again, we are seeing that we are advancing a solution to get higher tax revenue. So I think it's moving slowly. And this is fixing, I mean, you cannot defend, you cannot explain to the public why digital companies pay from 3 to 9% effective tax rate. You can't. If the average tax rate of our countries is from 20 to 35 for workers and for people in the economy, how could you explain that? So I'm just preventing. That's why the Secretary General is always saying that the OECD is such a great investment, because this 90 billion is like 400 times our budget.
Thank you. José Luis, I know that one thing that preoccupies you is the World Trade Organization. And this is clearly a very kind of emblematic story, because you have great powers, US, China, Europe, Japan, who all have slightly different or very different positions on this. I mean, as a businessman, how do you see the importance of the WTO's problems that it's having at the moment? What is the impact of that, and how does this need to be reformed?
Yeah, it's in the context of the US-China tension. The US-China tension that we are seeing that goes well beyond trade happens completely different if the WTO didn't exist. OECD has only one tool, which is persuasion. So they have to produce a paper, they have to convince everybody, they have to show the evidence, they have to be persistent, they convince and they produce results. WTO has enforcement capability. So you play macho, but you have a limited time. You can play macho, that is at one moment in which not the single country you are fighting with can retaliate, but the whole world can retaliate. So the WTO is protecting us from a real world trade. Why? Because at some point, the retaliation, the tariff, will move from single country to multiple countries. That's the reason why always the bulls stop at the edge of the bullfighter. Why? Because if not, it's not going to be one single country, it's going to be every country. That's the kind of multilateralism. If multilateralism doesn't have enforcement capability, is very little what we can do. To be part of the club, you will have to have, it's like in OAS, you need a democratic clause. A democratic clause, then it's going to be time, then people will come and say, we have a different form of democracy. What kind of democracy you have? I inherit from daddy, and you have to follow it. What's a form? It's a form of democracy, but it's not real democracy. It will happen there, 20 years, 50 years, or they will have to become more authoritarian, or they will have Western democracy. Western democracy is a more civilized and violent way of solving the discrepancies. Maybe capitalism, we have failed in the recipe. Western democracy, we have not failed. Western democracy is a way of solving things, talking, not killing. It's the only one I know. So WTO is an example of multilateralism with enforcement. So when you go to climate change and when you go to taxation, maybe we have to move to a form of multilateralism with enforcement. And then if some country very powerful doesn't want to be part of it, we have to start feeling the enforcement.
Thank you. You talk very persuasively about the US-China tensions and the world of great power competition that we are increasingly in. Well, we've always been in it in a way, but it's become more and more so as China has risen, Russia has been more assertive, and all the rest of it. It's very appropriate, I think, we're here in Paris, because obviously one of the world leaders who has really grappled with this very publicly is President Emmanuel Macron. And I wondered if I could ask you, Jean-Hervé, to assess how you see what President Macron is doing and whether he is likely to succeed. Because it's interesting that in one sense he's shown great commitment to saving multilateral deals like the Iran nuclear deal, but on the other, and in another sense, he has been very disruptive. He made waves with his comments last week on the brain death that he said NATO was suffering. He's talked about bringing Russia into a new organization and the security architecture of Europe. I mean, it's a high-risk strategy, isn't it? How do you see it, and is it what the world needs at the moment?
Reconnaissez que c'est une question difficile. Monsieur Macron n'est pas dans la salle, donc je vais être très libre, mais je ne vais pas vous répondre de manière très simple sur le sujet. Je voudrais revenir un instant, parce que ce que vous avez dit est formidable, sur la fiscalité. Moi, je crois que la réalité de ce besoin de multilatéralisme, tous les quatre, et tout le monde, est convaincu de l'absolu besoin, ne peut s'exprimer que de manière un peu nouvelle et un peu différente. Je vais revenir à Macron dans 10 secondes. Hein. N'ayez pas peur, mais simplement, je prends mes précautions. Quand vous regardez ce qui a marché, ce qui est nouveau, ce sont des méthodes dans lesquelles de nouveaux acteurs interviennent. C'est le multilatéralisme du monde précédent, du vieux monde, comme dirait M. Macron, c'est un multilatéralisme avec des grandes institutions, les Nations Unies, le FMI, la Banque mondiale, l'OMC, etc., etc., etc. Et ça, de mon point de vue, c'est un peu le G7 ou le G8, selon que la Russie en fait partie ou non. Et ça, de mon point de vue, c'est quelque chose qui, en réalité, a du mal à fonctionner. Pourquoi ? Parce qu'il est fondé sur l'idée que quand même il y a une puissance dominante, quand même ça le fonctionnement des 50 dernières années, que tout le monde discute autour de cette puissance dominante que sont les États-Unis. Et là, on est confronté à un problème différent, comme d'ailleurs en économie. Hein. Quand il y a un duopole, c'est pas la même chose qu'un monopole. C'est plus compliqué. Il se trouve qu'il y a un duopole aujourd'hui, 2 pays qui veulent être leaders dans le monde, et c'est très compliqué à gérer. Et c'est pas un problème commercial, c'est un problème, comme vous l'avez dit, monsieur, c'est un problème qui n'est pas ça. Alors, qu'est-ce qui a bien marché ? La COP21, il y a eu beaucoup d'ONG, il y a eu beaucoup d'entreprises. L'OCDE a fait un boulot, alors là, incroyable sur l'histoire de la fiscalité des entreprises et sur la réaction qu'on peut avoir vis-à-vis des grandes entreprises de technologie, des GAFA, etc. Et l'OCDE est comme vous l'avez dit, monsieur, c'est quand même une institution un peu à côté. C'est pas une institution qui a un pouvoir d'interdiction. Il se trouve que c'est par la conviction que ça passe. Ceci amène à M. Macron. Donc je crois qu'on ne passera très difficilement par nos institutions habituelles, et l'expression de M. Macron l'autre jour à propos du NATO, de l'OTAN, disant que c'était en gros, j'ai oublié sa formule exacte, mais c'est à peu près une mort clinique, je crois, c'était ça l'expression, enfin ça devait être ce genre-là, quoi qu'il arrive, était peut-être pas totalement diplomatique. Il a d'ailleurs été assez rapidement, pas taclé, mais il y a eu une réaction de la chancelière allemande. Mais sur le fond, l'approche de M. Macron, que je vais défendre sur ces sujets, elle est, de parler vrai. Je crois que rien n'est pire. Alors, vous l'avez fait à l'OCDE pour la fiscalité. M. Saint-Amand, il a parlé, et vous, depuis 10 ans, en 10 ans, on ne peut pas rester comme ça. Donc, parlez vrai, arrêtez les discours lénifiants dans un monde qui ne l'est pas. Le monde dans lequel nous rentrons est un monde assez conflictuel, assez tendu, avec des difficultés internes et externes très fortes, et je crois qu'il faut parler vrai. Après, je vais aller un tout petit peu plus loin, il y a, il me semble, un continent ou un groupe de pays. Je ne le lis pas parce que je suis français et donc européen. J'ai beaucoup de tendresse particulière pour les pays d'Amérique du Sud, donc c'est pas du tout lié à cela. Mais je pense que on va quand même vers des tensions très fortes entre les deux grands. C'est comme ça, comme on l'a connu dans d'autres temps, et que l'ensemble des pays de la sagesse, ceux qui peuvent en réalité calmer le jeu, introduire finalement de nouveaux acteurs, des entreprises, des ONG. C'est ce qui s'est passé au moment de la COP21. Ça s'est passé à Paris, tant mieux. Ça aurait pu se passer à Berlin ou à Madrid. L'essentiel, c'était que c'était des nouveaux acteurs. Et je pense que si l'Europe, l'Union européenne, arrive au fond à trouver un discours, j'allais dire, assez fort sur les besoins du multilatéralisme, comme l'OCDE l'a fait sur les problèmes de la fiscalité des grandes entreprises, qui est un résultat incroyable. Je pense que c'est le cas. Et je crois, mais c'est normal que je le pense ainsi, je pense que M. Macron est en réalité assez porteur d'un discours, j'allais dire, positif du rôle de l'Europe dans les années qui viennent. Voilà. Donc je suis pas du tout politique dans cette affaire-là. J'ai beaucoup cru aussi que Mme Merkel était une femme très importante. La situation politique allemande est un peu plus compliquée. Ailleurs, un peu partout en Europe, c'est compliqué. C'est compliqué aussi en France d'ailleurs. Il n'y a qu'à voir aujourd'hui. Mais il y a un discours, me semble-t-il, assez porteur sur l'Europe, et je crois que nous sortirons et nous ferons émerger un nouveau multilatéralisme par un groupe de pays, c'est pas que l'Europe, mais des groupes de pays qui sont des pays sages, qui sont des pays expérimentés, qui savent que le risque majeur pour le monde, il y a un risque, il ne faut pas se cacher derrière son petit doigt, il y a un vrai risque, c'est le fait que des pays au fond, exprime des solutions nouvelles, et je crois beaucoup aux nouveaux acteurs, l'OCDE, les ONG, les entreprises, tout ce qui permet, au fond, de déplacer un peu le débat par rapport aux institutions des années de la fin de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Voilà.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. We have an interesting question from the audience, which I'd like to turn to. Pierre Romelard asks, the WTO is a great organization for dialogue and action, but has it been imprudent, has it been wrong to accept some countries that don't really follow the rules? Well, no prizes for guessing who that's referring to. Gabriela, you're smiling. Perhaps you'd like to have a go at that.
No, I think it's even beyond that. The problem is that the framework in which the negotiations happens in the WTO have proven ineffective for so many years. And even beyond whether countries that are inside the organization follow the rules or not, because that happens in all the institutions. We also have the Paris Agreement, and we are seeing that even G7 countries continue to finance fossil fuels plants and activities. The problem there is that you have, as I said, the elements of the tax story is very strong political leadership, but very good technical work that explain exactly what is the problem, how do you resolve it, and how do you advance. Having single undertakings, take it all or leave it all, I don't think is the great formula in terms of negotiating ways in the WTO. Having the frame always on trade issues only, without considering the link between trade and investment, without talking about global value chains, and always looking at borders where you know that production processes happen, and we are here with lots of businessmen, you know that the production processes happen several times crossing borders, and therefore, as I said, no, why is Germany now in such a bad shape economically? Well, because of the trade war between China and the US, and because of the deceleration of China, because 40% of the inputs for Chinese exports are European content. And therefore, I think that what happens with the negotiating part of the WTO, and I agree with you, the infrastructure for dispute resolution is another thing, and I think that part has been highly effective. But the negotiating part, with the Doha round, with all this, is not reflecting the reality of the trade and investment world in which we are in. And this is where we need to really revamp the WTO, besides ensuring that countries follow the rules.
Thank you. Yeah, please do. Yeah, do you agree with
On
that?
the previous one, on President Macron, because I think what he's doing is not only good, but is necessary. And he will make mistakes. He will make mistakes. He's young. He's a statement. He's young. He will make mistakes. But I think he has the instinct that the war is not working. And this is not a war. So if we were a war, you call the Americans to support the Western countries. The Americans come, they deploy massive power, and we may win the war. But we are not facing Second World War. It's a more complex situation. But there is something in Europe, there is something in the Nordic countries, there is something in Canada that lies there, which is Western democracy. Human rights respect, citizen respect, competitive market. So it's a set of values that lies in Europe, Canada, Nordic countries. And he have to try to lead, to move those values to help solve the issues of inequality, issues of disrespect for multilateral solution, issues of having inability to listen to the other side. And that is how Europe was built, how the Nordic democracy have been built, how Canada works, one in here. Because you guys have strong values. You have a capitalism built around values. So obviously there are big problems of inclusion in Europe and the Nordic country compared with the rest of the world. We have a fantastic poverty-killing machine, which is the China, because it was phased out. Communist capitalism. Phasing out is very good to killing poverty. This is good. It has been proven. But it's not very good creating democracy and including complex citizens with demands of individualism, right to be different, all those things. So Europe needs to engage. We need Europe to engage. We need Canada to engage. We need the Nordic country to engage and try to diffuse the values, not only the money component. President Macron called last week Alberto Fernandez. They are not friends. I believe they didn't know each other. Why he called the president of Argentina? To engage. He tried to engage with Bolsonaro. Didn't work. You also have character. No? But he's doing the right thing. He's trying to spread the European model of solving things around the world. That has to be welcome.
Thank you. We've talked a lot about the impact of the rise of China. One thing that's been very surprising to me is that in my job is it's only this year really that at an EU level they've started to try to adopt a more sophisticated approach to China and to say, well, in some areas it can be a partner, in some areas a competitor, and in some areas a systemic rival. I mean, is there a sense, do you think, Jean-Hervé, that Western countries have been far too slow to wake up to the fact of that what China is doing is what great powers do? They assert themselves, not just economically, but strategically as well, and all powers do that, whether it be the United States or Europe or wherever.
Réponse, bien entendu, oui. Nous avions oublié que jusqu'en 1820, il y a un siècle et demi, un peu plus d'un siècle et demi, la Chine était la première puissance du monde. Et quand on a été la première puissance du monde, on le redevient assez facilement. Donc c'est une erreur. Deuxième erreur, évidemment, on a accepté la Chine à l'OMC sans contrepartie. C'est une erreur qui sera jugé par la suite par les économistes et par tout le monde. Troisième aspect, tous les calculs que nous faisions à l'époque se sont révélés faux. Alors ça arrive assez souvent chez les économistes, hein, mais se sont révélés faux, c'est-à-dire que nous pensions que pour que le taux de salaire j'allais dire moyen en Chine, pour la partie qui est vraiment développée, rejoigne le taux de salaire des pays développés, il faudrait 20 ou 30 ans. Et ça s'est fait en 12, 13 ans. Donc, deuxième erreur. Troisième erreur, et si je peux me permettre, le problème du ralentissement de l'économie mondiale et du commerce mondial n'est pas lié au conflit entre les États-Unis et la Chine. Je rappelle que le commerce mondial est passé de plus 8%, en gros plus 2%, il y a déjà 3-4 ans, avant que M. Trump se lance dans ces bagarres. Donc très attention, c'était l'évolution du modèle chinois. Et c'est l'erreur majeure qu'il ne faut pas faire aujourd'hui, c'est comprendre à quel point l'évolution du modèle chinois, en réalité vers une société qui ne sera plus l'usine du monde, mais qui est une société qui produit plus de services, donc moins d'importation, produit moins d'exportation, joue massivement sur le reste du monde. Vous avez parlé de l'Allemagne, vous avez traité, mais enfin pour l'Allemagne, ça pose un problème majeur, d'une certaine manière, en plaisantant, c'est plutôt satisfaisant pour les pays qui étaient moins impliqués dans le commerce, comme la France. Donc tout ça pour dire qu'on s'est trompé une première fois sur la puissance et la capacité chinoise de rebondir. On s'est trompé sur la capacité chinoise de devenir un pays avec finalement une capacité technologique exceptionnelle. Ne nous trompons pas sur les 10 ans qui viennent, c'est-à-dire le fait que la transformation, au-delà du débat Chine-États-Unis, que la transformation du modèle chinois va jouer de manière absolument massive sur le commerce mondial, va jouer donc de manière massive sur la croissance mondiale, et donc va jouer de manière massive sur sur le comportement que nous devons avoir. Je termine juste là-dessus. J'ai participé il y a encore quelques semaines à des séminaires sur la route de la soie. Vous savez, la route de la soie. Je vais vous dire, j'en suis sorti admiratif et légèrement inquiet. Légèrement inquiet. Donc, je veux dire, il ne faut pas se tromper sur ce qui va se passer. Ne nous focalisons pas exclusivement sur le conflit potentiel États-Unis-Chine. L'évolution de la Chine, qui est un très grand pays, qui défend ses intérêts, mais l'évolution aura un impact sur l'ensemble du monde et pas exclusivement sur les États-Unis. Voilà.
Thank you very much, and with perfect timing there, because the clock has beaten us. We are out of time. So the debate on whether multilateralism is dead or brain dead or just asleep will continue for some time. And in the meantime, I want to thank our distinguished panelists for a very lively debate. Thank you in the audience for your questions, and please show your appreciation for our panelists today.